Welcome to Self-Care from the Inside Out for Moms. I'm your host, Carrie McFarland, a certified life coach and founder of Moms Love Coaching. I help moms put themselves first to stop burnout. If you're a mom who is exhausted from carrying the load of getting it all done, then you are officially invited to join the conversation every week. It's the perfect time to take a break, grab your coffee, and focus on the most important person in your life, you. Welcome, everybody, to Self-Care for Moms, where we help burned out and stressed out moms feel better and have a happier life. That's our goal. That's what we try to do.
So
All
y'all
right.
got to know that when Carrie and I meet to record the podcast, we talk for an hour and a half podcast about what the podcast is going to be about, what we're going to talk about. And like, I'm just hoping now that the recording is on, that our little nuggets of wisdom that we think that will be interesting for you will come forward.
Yes, I think they will. They'll come forward. All right, so we'll just jump into it. We're going to sort of lift up the curtain a little bit in terms of behind the scenes of what happens in the brain of somebody who is trying to help moms with burnout and being stressed out. So we have talked about this several times. I don't have exact episodes, although our very first episode, Self-Care is Supposed to Be Selfish, we do touch on a lot of this stuff, but we have talked about it throughout. The whole reason that we started this podcast is because we ourselves have experienced burnout and stress and anxiety and all the things that go along with raising kids, having a family, navigating work, navigating a spouse or partner, an extended family, and just all of those moving parts all the time. And then you're just on this never-ending moving train going forward, never being able to catch your breath, never being able to really focus on yourself the way that you want to, the way that you used to. And it's okay for a while. And then there's a certain point where you just feel like you're done. At least that's how I feel sometimes. I'm just done. I want to take a little vacation from the train. I want to get off the train, but you can't get off the train because life is still moving. And so that leaves you to figure out how to be able to take care of yourself in a way that makes you feel fulfilled and happy and gives you all the things that you need so you can have the kind of life that you want to have, but you're doing it while hanging off of a train, dodging all the trees that are coming at you, and then also trying to take care of everybody else that's in the train as well, right? And so at a certain point, you're like, I am done. I don't want to do it this way anymore. Not that you want to walk away from your family or walk away from your job, although sometimes it's true. But but ultimately, that's not what we're talking about. But how do you take care of yourself in a different way without feeling burned out and stressed out? So when I say I'm lifting up the veil a little bit in terms of how I'm feeling and, what goes on in my brain, I have been feeling that this week. Just wanting to get off of that train. And how do I do everything I want to do, but do it in a different way so I am feeling fulfilled and content and happy and not feeling frazzled and used up and burnt out? How do I do that? And so that's why we wanted to talk about burnout today, burnout, stressed out, all those things today, because I feel like it's something that moms go through and they just keep going through it because they don't know what else to do. You don't know how to do it differently. You don't know how to stop or slow down that train. And so you just keep doing it and doing it and doing it until you reach your complete breaking point, which is the whole reason that we have this podcast, is to interrupt that whole process so you can say, no, I want to do it differently. And I can do it differently. I may not be 100% sure about how to do it differently, but I know that it can be done, and I just have to figure out the way that I can do it differently for myself. So that's why we wanted to talk about this today. Because, quite frankly, this is what we do, and we still feel burnout and stress and anxiety about things. And so I don't want it to seem like we have everything figured out. We don't have everything figured out. Um, we're sort of learning as we go. We do have tools that we have accumulated along the way that make it a little easier for us to pull from. And so we can sort of see what's happening faster. So if this had happened to me 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't have even noticed it. It would have just been life. But now I recognize it as I am getting burned out and I need to stop and I need to do something differently. That's kind of where we're at right now. So when when we were talking before we started recording, we were looking up burnout and stress cycles and different terminology that people use to describe what burnout is and how you out of it. And so Angie found all that stuff. um, what would you say, Angie, is the first sign that somebody is feeling burned out? What would somebody look for in that instance?
So, what Carrie is referring to is I did a deep dive into burnout a few years ago, and one of the books that came up for it is this book by Emily Nagoski and Amelia Nagoski. They're sisters, not teachers. They might be teachers. I can't remember. But so I just plucked it off my shelf, and the book is called Burnout: The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. The stress cycle is this. So I mean, just think about this in ancient times. A saber-toothed tiger shows up at the door of the cave and terrorizes you. Your response might be fight. You get out the spears, you chase them away, you flight, you run into the deepest corner of the cave and hide. You flock, which means you gather all your family around you. So there's more of you that the saber-toothed tiger has to get through in order to have a yummy, scrumptious little human meal. And then freeze is that. That's it. You're sitting there just looking like crud. So, and then the threat, it diminishes in some way, whatever it is. So the saber-toothed tiger gets bored with you for whatever reason and moves on its way, or else your village comes and they scare it off, or they, destroy it, whatever. And then everybody's all happy again until the next stressor. So, but stress it occurs in your physiology. It's in your body. And if you're going from stressor to stress cycle to stress cycle to stress cycle, you may not be really dealing with the stress. And so burnout happens when that stress has accumulated in your body, and then certain things are going to start happening. So you notice yourself doing the same apparently pointless thing over and over again, or engaging in self-destructive behavior. So
That's the train, people.
I can give you an example of, like, I have this tendency to window shop online. Lately, though, I've been pushing the add to cart and pay. Like, that was happening in August, but now in hindsight, and I think a lot of times when you're unaware of what is really causing that stress and the fact that you might not be dealing with it, I like to stress eat. So I tend to eat the worst foods possible, which is, the processed stuff with lots of sugar. And then that also exacerbates the stress because you're not giving yourself the nutrition leg up, so to speak, so that you can better manage the stress. So you notice yourself doing the same thing. My story was really
Yes.
about, fake shopping for a long time,
Yeah.
and just to waste the time when I like have a to-do list a mile long of the
Yeah, so
things.
you're avoiding.
Yeah.
So
So
that's the flight. You're
so
avoiding it.
what do you do when you start getting into that? Oh my gosh, I'm stuck in repeat.
Yeah, well, so I mean, before I kind of notice it, I stress eat too, for sure. I don't actually, I mean, I do eat stuff that's not good for me, but I'll eat even things that are good for me. My family laughs at me because I'm like, I ate so much today. They're like, what'd you eat? I'm like, I just ate a whole thing of grapes. They're like, really? I'm like, yeah, but it was still too much. But I'll also eat the junk stuff too.
I think your
Fritos
version
is
of
my
drunk food
favorite.
is what? The trail mix?
Frito oh, trail mix, I will eat a
Fritos.
lot of trail mix, but Fritos,
I have to say though,
I like
Fritos
a Frito.
are corn and oil.
Yeah, there's but salt and salt,
Oh,
a
of
ton of
course,
salt.
salt,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah,
So that those are
they're
kinda
not
my
the junk.
go-tos.
Yeah, not the junkiest junk food, no.
It's still pretty bad. But
Mhm.
anyway, um and I also do things to avoid. So, my big thing is social media. I'll scroll. I'll just scroll, scroll, scroll. And then I'll realize that I have scrolled for a very long time. And so, what I have noticed about that, and spoiler alert for those of you listening, I am developing a course around scrolling social media. So, stay tuned for that. That will be coming. But what I've noticed is in the moment doing it doesn't bother me. Like, I'm not doing it against my own will, let's say. I'm not like, "I have to stop scrolling and I can't stop." I don't feel that way in the moment. I'm like, "Oh, what's next? What's next? What next?" Right?
I'm sorta
Um,
in the, "I need to stop this, but F it, I'm not going to. I
yeah,
don't
I
know."
do get that way sometimes,
Yeah.
but what I notice is the next day,
Yeah.
that's when I feel really bad. And
Mm.
so I really noticed this, well, this morning. So let's lift the curtain all the way up. This morning I woke up. It's Sunday as we're recording, and I felt awful. Everything in my life was terrible. That's how I woke up. Everything in my life was terrible and nothing I do matters. And, it's, what's the point? Right? That's kind of how I woke up. Now, I know intellectually that I feel that way when I am getting very stressed out and burned out. Like, I know cognitively that that is a symptom for me. However, doesn't make it feel any better just because you know where it's coming from. It's kind of
Right.
like, yeah, I know I broke my arm because I fell off the bike. It doesn't make your arm hurt any less, you know?
That's
It's
true.
like,
Awareness doesn't always make
yeah.
the awareness does not make the hurt go away.
Right, exactly. But what it does do is it lets me see what's happening and the steps that I need to take to get out of it. And so this morning I felt that way because last night I was scrolling, 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 scrolling. Now I haven't been doing that all week because I've noticed that I have been feeling burned out and stressed out and my mood has been getting a little darker and kind of all those things I just said, like, what's the point and that kind of stuff. I got to do stuff differently. My life's not the way I want it, right? So all those things started coming up. But I know it's because I'm feeling burned out. And so I did a few things, but one of the things that I did was I got off social media. So any of you who follow my Instagram, you will notice that I was absent this week. I didn't post. I posted one thing, I think, maybe something in my stories, but I didn't post because I didn't want to be on social media. I didn't want to be near it or touch it or do anything with it. Well, for whatever reason last night, oh, I know what it was. I posted a picture in my volunteer group that I'm in as I volunteer at a kennel, and I posted pictures of the dogs that I had played with yesterday. And just that one thing, you post the picture and then you look down and you're like, reels that you might like. And I'm like, I think I would like those. So I clicked it, and the next thing you know, bang, 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 I'm scrolling, 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 scrolling. Didn't feel bad in the moment, but when I woke up today, I felt it. I did feel it. And so that is definitely something I do when I am stressed and burned out. And that is a flight
Yeah,
response. That's
it
an
is.
avoidance response. You don't want to do
Yeah.
anything. So you do things something that is mindless. And there's all sorts of science behind why scrolling does those things to you. And again, spoiler alert, that's why I'm having a course on this. So that will be coming and all those bits and pieces and answers will be in there. But so this is what we talk about with everything. Awareness is the first step. Knowing that you are feeling burned out is the first step to getting out of it. It doesn't get you out of it. Just being aware of it doesn't get you out of it. You're like, "Oh, I'm in a hole.
Yeah.
All right." And you magically float to the top. It doesn't work that way. You still have to work your way out of that hole. But if you know you're in the hole and then you know the steps to take to get out of the hole, it's going to be a lot easier than if first you don't even know you're in the hole and then you have no idea what to do to get out of it. So,
I heard a great quote about awareness this week, and I can't remember it, but one of the things that I'm thinking about is awareness gives you choice, because
yes.
once you're aware of what you're doing, then you get to decide if you wanna continue to do that or not. So it
Yes.
does give you some choice.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. And, depending on how stressed out and burned out and how far down that hole you are, you might choose to keep doing it. You might, which is, I mean, it's not right or wrong. It's about how you feel. So if you know that you're feeling terrible and you keep choosing the thing that makes you feel terrible, ultimately, maybe not in the moment, but it makes you feel terrible later on, the next day, even throughout the week, that's when you want to start asking yourself, do I still want to do that thing? And if the answer is no, then take steps to stop it. If the answer is no, but I don't know how, then learning what you need to learn to get out of that is what would be your next step. And if it's, yeah, I want to keep doing it, okay. And you want to ask yourself why. Why do you want to keep doing something that actually makes you feel not great later on? And
yeah,
what is the answer
ultimately,
to that? Yeah,
yeah,
ultimately,
the
right?
ultimate result is that you don't feel so great, or like in my case, the additional indulging in low quality carbohydrates ultimately saps my energy, saps my focus. The other thing they talk about, a sign that you need to deal with the stress, is chandeliering, which is a Brene Brown term. But chandeliering is where somebody cuts you off at the parking lot, gets into your space and you were headed there, and then you go into road rage. Road
Hmm.
rage is an example of chandeliering. You're
Yeah.
making mountains out of molehills. It's an overreaction to something that perhaps, and I think part of that, and I'm not, this is my own theory on that, as part of that is that stress is held in your body, and then you get a trigger. And because we used to talk about this in schools with kids that come in who are highly stressed. You might not see it until somebody doesn't share their book with them or something silly like that. And then the kid goes out of, is totally off the rails. That's that chandeliering. It's taking that stress, it's taking your reaction to the next level because somehow your body needs relief. Your
Hmm.
body's doing these things like the excessive scrolling. It's your brain trying to help you manage the stress.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's not the most efficient way. Brains like you to be efficient. It tricks itself into thinking that's efficient. It tricks itself into thinking that going, like having a complete overreaction to something, will help you. And maybe in the moment you might feel some relief of that stress, but ultimately in the long run, if you're not really finding ways to alleviate the stress in general, that is creating more stress for you.
And that's where that cycle comes from, right?
So yeah.
Because it feels good in the moment and it feels like it's solving whatever it is in the moment. But overall, it's actually not helping and or making things worse. And so then you have to solve for that. And so you keep doing the same things over and over again. So you feel good in the moment, but then you don't feel good overall. And then you do something again like overreact or do something to avoid like online shopping or online window browsing or scrolling or anything. And you feel worse again, and so then you have to do something in the moment to make yourself feel better, and so it goes on and on and on and on and on. And that's why awareness is so helpful because you can see that pattern of what you're doing and choose, like you said, choose what you want to do next.
The other thing that happens is that you may be hiding from your life. I love it when I have a weekend where my car has not left the driveway since Friday night. From Friday night to Monday morning, my car has been in the same space I left it when I arrived. But maybe I have to be more aware, is that because I just had some wonderful things to do at home and I had already done my grocery shopping, so I didn't have to go. And maybe I had friends come in. That's why it was in the same spot all weekend long. But was I doing that with intention, or was I really just trying to hide and shut life out and say, no more? I need to just stop everything. That is another sign that your stress level is maybe high and may have become unmanageable in some way.
Yeah, I think it goes back to that question, why? So if you're choosing to stay at home and be by yourself, if that feels good to you in the moment, that's great. Does it feel good to you later on? When you get up Monday, are you thinking, wow, that was great. I feel recharged and re energized. I had all this time for myself. That was just what I needed. Or are you waking up on Monday and thinking, "Ugh, I could have done so much more. I could have seen this friend. I could have done the grocery shopping or done something more productive and I didn't. And now I feel terrible." So that's a test, is not in the moment because your brain will trick you into thinking that, yep, this is just what you need. How do you feel later on when all of that is done? Are you feeling good about it? Are you not feeling good about it? And that's when you have to ask, well, why did I want to be in the house by myself? And from those answers, you can start figuring out what it is that you're trying to achieve, and is the way that you're trying to achieve it the best way for you to be able to get the result of feeling happy and fulfilled and all that stuff?
Mhm. And I think too, when you're hiding, sometimes I use it as a strategy to help alleviate stress because home for me is a very safe place. And I love being in my home by myself. And I know a lot of that many moms that I've talked to have talked about this idea that the time that they're rarely in their home by themselves, and that is one way that they can completely recharge. So you have to look at, if you're in bed all weekend long and just shoveling in the potato chips and ice cream, and you're not taking good care of yourself, and it's not about exquisite self-care, it's about just not wanting to deal with anything. On the one end, that behavior can be completely self-serving and recharging and replenishing, and on the other side can be completely de-energizing, making your resilience less because you've not given yourself proper fuel. Maybe your sleep is starting to get disrupted. You end up sleeping all day, then you don't sleep all night, and you have to go back to work Monday morning and you've been up half the night. There so
Mhm.
we you want to look at the net result of that behavior. And if that result is that you're feeling worse about yourself, worse about your situation, it is a time to consider that and think about, okay, maybe it means I need to deal with my stress in a more healthy way. The fourth sign that they talk about in this book is your body feels out of whack. And
Mm.
I notice, so I have chronic neck issues from an injury when I was a child, I'm sure, but it's been exacerbated over time, especially now that we have handheld devices and I have my neck bent, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so it's posture and all that stuff now that I am a woman of advanced age. I don't even know if that's right, because when I was pregnant in my late 30s, I was a woman of advanced age, geriatric
You're just the right
pregnancy,
age.
just
That's
the
what
right
age you
age.
are.
So I just like my body can just feel extra achy, and I'm not feeling rested when I wake up in the morning. And I could eat the same things and feel completely different kinds of energy from it. And if
Mhm.
I'm just tired and dragged down, so Carrie has talked a lot about feeling really tired the last few weeks. I don't know why, but I'm just so tired. Yeah.
Mhm. Yep.
So a sign
Yeah,
that
that's true.
the stress is maybe a factor there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so much physiological components to feeling stressed out and burned out. There's all the chemicals that go through your body. Emotions are basically chemicals. And so we've all heard about cortisol and how bad it is for your body when you have that constantly. And that's basically what overwhelm and burnout does. It just, your cortisol is um, released at a higher rate than it would be normally. You're only supposed to have short bursts of that, but the way that we live now, we're having long-term cortisol release, and so it affects your body, it affects the way you're thinking because it affects your brain, it affects everything. So, and I'm not a scientist and I'm not a doctor, and I have a very layman understanding of how all that works, but all I know is that when you have those stress chemicals in your body for a long time, you really feel it. And I will say, if you have had a period in your life where you're very stressed and overwhelmed for a long time, and then you get out of that and you feel what it feels like to not have that happening, and then you get used to that, and then you feel stressed again, it's very apparent that those chemicals have an extreme effect on your body because you don't really notice it if you're constantly stressed out. They might go up and down a little bit, you don't really notice it. But then if you get out of that completely or mostly, there's a big difference. And then when it happens again, it's almost intolerable because you've detoxed yourself from it. So I feel like that's kind of where I'm at right now is I have had a long time where I haven't felt that, and now I'm feeling it again, and so it feels almost intolerable to me. That's part of the reason why I know that that's happening because it's so drastically different from how I've been feeling. So
Right.
it's very it's a very stark contrast.
I think about like if you're raising so I had a only child. He was 12 when the first of the younger two was born, and 14 when the youngest one was born. So then I had two kids who were 2.5 years apart. And I remember when my youngest was finally 3 or 4 and waking up one day and being like, I have strung together months of good sleep because nobody has been waking me up in the middle of the night. When you come out of a period of high stress and you realize that you can often, I feel anyway, like I've been often able to recognize what was happening in that time, and it builds more awareness so that the next time that happens to me I can be more like, oh, that I remember that during that time I was really, I was buying candy. Every time I went in the store I was always buying candy. Like, you can see certain behaviors happening. My mother was a caretaker for my father for many years, and it took her like a year to a year and a half, I'd say, after he passed away, where she felt like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize what, like, the cloud of that stress. And there's one thing, how that impacts you. And there's one thing that's very hopeful about this book. Stress isn't the problem. And trying to live your life as stress free as possible is not living a human life, because in being human means we're going to experience stress.
Right.
And what they talk about is that it's about building that resilience in yourself. That it says stress is not bad for you. It's the stuck part that is bad for you. It's
Right.
living in that stress and being stuck in that stress. And they say, and I'm just going to quote this, wellness happens when your body is a place of safety for you, even when your body is not necessarily in a safe place. You can be well even during the times when you don't feel good. So
I
that
like that.
just gives me vast amounts of hope that I can feel a sense of wellness and well-being even when there's things happening in my life that are not great.
Right. I think what I want people to take out of this episode is just being aware of how you're feeling and making choices of what will overall make you feel better, right? Don't pay attention to in the moment. Sometimes it's okay to pay attention to in the moment, but if you notice that what you're doing is making you feel terrible overall, then you want to just ask yourself, what am I trying to get out of doing what I'm doing? So, for example, social media scrolling, right? Are you just filling the time? Are you trying to entertain yourself? Are you searching for answers? Are you trying to get connection? Like, what is the reason that you keep doing it? And again, there's science behind why we scroll so much too, but it's just that basic question of why? Why am I doing this? What am I trying to accomplish? And then when you figure that out, you will be able to shift what it is that you do instead of doing the thing that makes you feel terrible overall, right? So if you're searching for connection through social media and you're feeling terrible overall by doing that, then maybe you want to search connection different ways, however that is for you. So that's just an example. So, all right, I think we will leave it there until next week. We hope you have a great week and we will see you again.
See you next
Bye.
time, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening today. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to us if you like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. This makes it easier for everyone to find us and helps us spread our message about self care from the inside out. Have a wonderful week. And remember, making yourself the priority is the highest form of self care.